Hello, everyone, and welcome from the other side of the world. I am, well, at least from where I normally am. Some of you may be right next door to me right now. Anyways, I apologize for the shakeup in the schedule a little bit on office hours this week, but I definitely wanted to pop on and talk a little bit. So,
Well, at least from where I normally am. Some of
this
you
will,
may be.
oh, forgot to mute my own self. So, hopefully, this will work pretty well. So a couple of quick things. So this is week 4, right? And essentially you're doing unit 3 during this week, and unit 4 will be up shortly, the first half of it. So unit 3 is all about extending agent-based models. So you should be looking, we take the example, the L for all bar model, which is one of my favorite ones. It's kind of a simple economics model that talks about bounded rationality and inductive reasoning. I think it's a really good, powerful example of what agent-based models can do. But hopefully you're also looking through the models library and kind of figuring out what you want to do yourself and kind of experimenting a little bit with other models. And there's actually an assignment where we ask you to identify a model. And there's been a couple questions about that. Truth of the matter is that you don't have to use that model, right? I just want to get an idea of what kind of models you find intriguing or interesting for the properties you're interested in looking into, right? So don't feel like once you do that, you're committed to a particular model for a particular setup. You can really do whatever you want, right? Okay. So next week is Unit 4. I want to talk briefly about that. I'm still trying to update a couple of the videos, and I wasn't able to do them completely before I left. So for the second half of Unit 4. Now, Unit 4, like Unit 1, is going to span over 2 weeks because it takes a long time to kind of process through everything that has to do with building a new model. So I'm going to release sections, I think, 4.1 through 4.3, and I'm also going to release part of 4.6 later this weekend. And 4.1 through 4.3 are kind of the intro, how to build a model, and 4.6 is the summary, but it also has the assignment for actually doing your model design, your final model design. This is the first of 2 peer-reviewed graded assignments that you have to do for the class. And you're going to have approximately 3 weeks, I'll have to check the deadlines exactly, after that assignment gets released to turn it in, right? And then you'll have 2 weeks after that to complete some peer reviews on that assignment, right? So that's that's what's coming up in the near future, and I definitely wanted to explain a little bit about what's going on there. Now, there's also been some questions about exams, right? And the exams don't have a due date other than the end of the course. So you can, you could even go through the whole course and then go back and do exam 1 and so forth, right? But you just need to complete them before the end of the course. The only things that have due dates are the model design document, which the one I just talked about is coming up in the next 3 weeks or so, and then the final project, which is due at close to the end of the course. It's actually not due at the end of the course. Keep that in mind. It's due a couple weeks beforehand because we need time for people to peer review the assignments before we end the course, right? And then the peer reviews for both of those obviously also have deadlines. There's been a couple of questions about what the appropriate level to model at is, and that's something that we're going to get into a lot more in Section 5 of the course, Unit 5, which we'll be getting to in about 3 weeks. But really, I try and emphasize that the level is the level that's appropriate for the question you want to answer, right? So even if some people build a model the same way again, like the wolf sheep model almost always has individual wolves and individual sheep, right? If you're interested in different questions, like maybe transmission of disease between wolves and sheep, maybe individual wolves and sheep aren't the correct level, maybe you need to add an additional level of detail about cellular transmission or something like that. And on the other hand, if you are interested in population level behaviors, right, then maybe the correct level is not the individual wolf or sheep, but the herd of the wolf or the pack of the wolves or the herd of the sheep, right? So think about what the level is that's appropriate to answer the question you want. So there's been several questions about economy and labor markets and finance models. Again, I just want to reiterate, if you I would highly recommend, going to things like the NetLogo Modeling Commons, right? The community user models on the NetLogo page, and openavm.org to look for other models. And if all 3 of those resources fail you, check out scholar.google.com, right? There's often a good set of resources that are linked there. And if you have a particular question, sometimes I can find a particular model for you, but not in all cases, right? But I'm happy to try and help out and help you point you in the right direction. I can almost find a model that's at least tangentially related to what you're interested in, right? And so we can go from there. Again, there's been those questions about due dates for the assignments. By the way, the one place, if you ever want to look up a due date of assignment that's not published yet, it's on the calendar. I put all the due dates for all the assignments on the calendar. And the calendar's been linked a couple places in the feed. I'll try and remember to put a link again in this below this story so that you have it there as well. Finally, one interesting question I wanted to address today. I got a great question about equation-based modeling versus agent-based modeling, right? Joe wrote in, Wasserman wrote in with a great question where he says, in my discipline, communication studies, we typically work with EBMs, which are equation-based models, and more specifically GLM, which is generalized linear modeling, right? My question is, how would you incorporate empirical research in this framework into an ABM? Perhaps more specifically, how might one use EBMs to justify quantitative parameters in an ABM? Are there any guides or exemplars of doing so you can share? Now, we're going to get into this a lot more as we go through this course. Remember, we're just at the beginning part of like building the models and learning how agent-based modeling works. But in some of the units coming up, like Unit 6, we do some analysis of data and we talk about other aspects of it. And then in Unit 7, we talk about validation, which a lot has to do with taking ABMs and comparing it to real-world data. Right, and in Units 8 and 9, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite things, actually, which is and something I've become fascinated with recently, which is trying to derive agent-based models directly from big data, bringing together kind of agent-based modeling and big data. Right? Okay. So as a quick comment, besides that, right, to more specifically answer the question, there is a lot of disciplines where EBM is much more common than ABM. So if your discipline's one of them, don't feel bad. I would say the vast majority of disciplines, that's the case, right? There's a great paper that Van Perenack and Rick Riola and a bunch of others wrote on comparing EBM to ABM. It's a little dated, but still very useful. And I'll post a link to that. Many actual ABMs in both the academic world and in real-world practice are empirical, and we're going to discuss a lot of those going forward. But the data can really be used in a number of ways, right? Two classic methods are, one, build a model from theory and then calibrate the model by altering the parameters until the output matches an empirical data set, or to infer rules of behavior. So in that case, you're kind of calibrating your agent-based model to real-world data, so the empirical data is driving the parameter settings. Or two, you can infer rules of behavior using machine learning, for instance, so you can infer the actual rules of the agents directly. In the first case, there's a lot of classic examples of that. So the Anasazi model is a good example. I have a paper on agent-based modeling in marketing where we do that using the BAS model data. And so there's a bunch of examples of that, and we'll talk more about those in the rest of the class. For the latter, though, that's not as well explored, but it's something I'm very passionately interested in. I've started to explore it in some work that I've been doing with Michel Gervin and David Darman and others, where we've looked at using causal state modeling to infer rules of behavior for individual agents directly from big data. And we're going to talk about that more as this course gets on. So I know it's not like a perfect question, but there are perfect answers to the question, but there are a bunch of ways. I guess it's the simple answer, and I hope to highlight a couple of them as we continue through this course. Okay. Well, I'm going to check the feeds, but because no one knew I was talking right now, probably there aren't many people out there watching, so I bet there won't be many questions, and then I'll just sum up. So let me see if there's anything else that came in while I've been chatting. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. There has been a couple questions about people joining late. Fine, there is. I mean, the deadline will be the deadline to join the course will be the deadline of the first assignment, right? Because you can't join once that first assignment is done. But other than that, we're happy to bring people on board. Okay, this week, concentrate on Unit 3. Look at models that inspire you. Look forward to Unit 4, which is next week, and looking forward to the description of the final design document assignment. And that'll be it. Oh, and just a small reminder, next week I actually fly home on Tuesday, so office hours will be on Wednesday instead, but they won't be as late as they were this week when they're late on Friday. So we'll be talking about Unit 4 more at that time. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care, and look forward to seeing your answers to what models inspire you. Okay?